Hello again to another Agricultural Reacts, and today we'll be watching How was Switzerland Formed? The History of Switzerland from Knowledgeia. And Knowledgeia usually have very good videos, so let's just jump into it and just see how was Switzerland formed. And how did it happen that, I'm guessing it's something to do with the fact where it's located as well, it's quite small country, probably had lots of wars as well in history, but it's still there, so yeah, and it's neutral. Isn't it? Yeah. How did that works? I wonder. Let's go.
Today, Switzerland is known for its chocolate and neutrality. Wedged between Italy, France, Germany, and Austria, the humble, non-belligerent nation and base for the founding of the Red Cross has scarcely made a bad name for itself in the recent history books.
True.
When we think of Switzerland, we don't really think of violence or political turmoil. But that's because we also don't really think about how Switzerland became Switzerland. Today, the nation known by the name Switzerland in English is actually officially known as the Swiss Confederation. With 4 official languages and 41,285 square miles of land filled with roughly 8.6 million people, when you start
not that small if you think about it.
You may start to wonder, how did this nation begin? Well, the formation of the Swiss Confederation seems to have happened in a few stages. Back in the BC era, modern-day Switzerland was occupied by Helvetic Celts and would later be taken under the crown of the Roman Empire. From there, the region passed between Germanic tribes, Charlemagne, and eventually the Holy Roman Empire. It was during this time that we see the first phase of the Swiss Confederation starting on the path that turned it into Switzerland as we know it. First came the Old Swiss Confederacy. In 1291, 3 Swiss cantons from within the Holy Roman Empire decided to form an alliance amongst each other in response to the destabilized environment around them. These cantons, Uri, Schwyz, and Unterwalden, agreed through a federal charter to jointly manage common interests, including defense and economy. While this wasn't the first time that such an agreement had been made, it is still marked by many historians and the Swiss state as the start of the modern nation's journey. This early confederacy would also grow fairly quickly, and by the 15th century, the 3 original members had welcomed in the city-states of Lucerne, Zurich, and Bern, in addition to the cantons of Glarus and Zug. This successful expansion was not praised by all, though, and the Austrians in particular became agitated by it. Military conflicts between members of the Swiss Confederacy and Austria began to break out off and on throughout the latter half of the 14th century. This clash was a result of the ongoing strife between the Old Swiss Confederacy and the Duchy of Austria under the command of Leopold III, and resulted in a remarkable Swiss triumph. Another victory came in 1388 when the Swiss and Austrians collided again, this time at the Battle of Naples. And an even bigger turning point came for the Swiss in 1499 with the Swabian War. The Swabian War occurred between the Habsburgs of Austria and their Swabian League allies against the Swiss Confederacy, with their friends from the 3 leagues of the Grisons. As before, the root of the conflict was a territorial dispute over other neighboring lands, as the Swiss were continuing with their expansion at the expense of Austria's own ambitions. The war lasted from January through September of the same year and resulted in a peace treaty that greatly favored the Swiss and eventually granted the Confederacy de facto independence from the Holy Roman Empire. Still, the Swiss cantons remained an official part of the Holy Roman Empire for a bit longer. However, their expansion did not end by any means. For example, in 1501, 2 more cantons, Basel and Schaffhausen, joined the Confederacy. In September of 1515, the Battle of Marignano between the Old Swiss Confederacy pitted against France and Venice proved that the so-far invincibility shown by the Swiss was not quite as bulletproof as they had hoped. Nonetheless, despite the crushing defeat, the Confederacy stood strong and moved on to the next obstacle, the Protestant Reformation. The Swiss Confederacy was directly affected by the Reformation and subsequently became greatly divided. Between the influence from Luther over in Germany to that of Zwingli and Calvin, the Swiss were overwhelmed by Protestantism, and many began to follow the movement and align with its beliefs. This caused a rift between those newly Protestant Swiss and the remaining Catholics within the Confederation, and a period known as the Wars of Kappel and later the Wars of Villmergen came as a consequence.
It's a lot of wars, huh?
Despite the internal conflicts, though, the overall shared interests
That's just
of
the
the
beginning.
Confederacy members proved to be of high importance and managed to hold the alliance together. As a result, by the mid-17th century, with the signing of the Treaty of Westphalia, the Swiss Confederacy was able to gain full independence from the Holy Roman Empire.
And look at this.
Though
The shape is
freedom
kind of
was
still
sweet,
similar to what
was
it is today,
short-lived
isn't it?
for the Swiss. In the late 18th century, Napoleon led his troops into the Swiss cantons for a successful annexation that resulted in the establishment of a centralized government and a single state under the French. It took almost 2 decades for this to be undone with the Congress of Vienna in 1815, but this finally re-established the original Confederacy. Additionally, this agreement reconfirms the former neutrality that the Swiss Confederacy had established back with the Treaty of Westphalia, and allowed the admission of Valais, Neuchâtel, and Geneva into the Confederacy. This victory quickly led to another major step toward the establishment of today's Switzerland. After freeing itself from the grasp of France, the Swiss Confederacy faced a new string of internal conflict, as the Catholics hoped to maintain the structures of old, while the Protestants wanted to create a more unified federal state instead, amongst other civil and religious disputes between the sides. Ultimately, the Protestants won the day, and it was decided that Switzerland would become a more unified federal state with a new official constitution in 1848. Later revisions were made to the constitution in 1874 and once more in 1891, with some slight amendments also made in 1999.
Wow,
Thanks to this
that's a lot
constitution and its amendments,
time between the
referendum
changes.
democracy and autonomy for the included cantons became the new pillars of Switzerland's structure, and much of the constitution was modeled after that of the United States.
A lot of
Some
constitutions
interesting
were modeled
inclusions
after
in
that.
The new constitution were, for example, one clause that allows the entire constitution to be rewritten if that was found to be necessary. Another put an end to Swiss troops serving abroad outside of the Holy See and under Francis II of the Two Sicilies. Furthermore, the 1891 update put a strong emphasis on direct democracy, and for the most part,
Wait.
finalized its contents.
He said 1899?
If that was found, dates. Later
1848?
revisions were made to the Constitution in 1874,
Yeah.
and once more in 1891.
Okay,
with some
91.
slight amendments also made in 1999.
1999, yeah, so that's
Thanks to this constitution and its amendments,
rather
referendum
1891,
democracy
so
and
that's
autonomy for the included
108 years
cantons became
between.
the new pillars of Switzerland's structure, and much of the constitution was modeled after that of the United States. Some interesting inclusions in the new constitution were, for example, one clause that allows the entire constitution to be rewritten if that was found to be necessary. Another put an end to Swiss troops serving abroad outside of the Holy See and under Francis II of the Two Sicilies. Furthermore, the 1891 update put a strong emphasis on direct democracy, and for the most part, finalized its contents. During the 20th century, Switzerland continued to shape itself as a unified nation and a strong European political entity. Nonetheless, it opted to stay out of both world wars and eventually joined the Council of Europe in 1963 and became a full member of the United Nations in 2002. While attempts to join the European Union ultimately resulted in a culmination of failure and withdrawal of effort, Switzerland still maintains close ties with its surrounding EU neighbors and did vote to join the Schengen area. So today, the Swiss Confederation, or Switzerland, is a unified nation of roughly 64% Swiss German speakers, 22% French speakers, 8% Italian speakers, and the remaining Romansh speakers, with its constitution dating back to 1848, while many argue that the true date of the nation's origin can be traced all the way back to 1291. The question
I would agree with
how
that.
Switzerland came to be formed can be answered in a few ways. One being the simple timeline of how it happened. The formation of the old Swiss Confederation, the expansion period, freedom from the Holy Roman Empire, the centralization under Napoleon, the re-establishment of the original confederation with the Congress of Vienna, the Civil War, and finally, the establishment of the modern confederation and its constitution. This, of course, fails to address the rest of the how, or maybe the why. For a while, there was no desire for Switzerland to become any type of unified nation, and the rulers of the cantons were satisfied with the structure of the old confederacy. At that point in time, the higher priority was gaining more autonomy from the Holy Roman Empire and later France. Still, the first inklings of such changes may have begun with the Protestant Reformation back in the 16th century. Without a doubt, though, the division that this created proved to be a root cause in the eventual push by the Protestants for a unified state, amongst other changes. The war between the traditional Catholics and the liberal Protestants only showed the people even more that unity was necessary, and a federal government would be beneficial in healing the divide.
Okay. So I learned how Switzerland became into existence. And that's kind of interesting, but like I was thinking, there was probably lots of fighting and things like that. They were obviously, I can't say occupied, but they were part of Holy Roman Empire, the Roman Empire, and then France as well, and then other things, and obviously there was so... I do really have to find some kind of video about how the neutrality works. How does that actually working out for countries? How is it that some countries actually not understand but respect that? There you go. Because sometimes I just don't know. I just don't understand how it is that, let's say, Nazi didn't occupy Switzerland. When they occupied France, they occupied Poland, they occupied Czechoslovakia. Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.